The views, information, or opinions expressed during the Seeds of Wellbeing series are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of the University of Hawaii, College of Tropical Agriculture and Human Resources, and any affiliated organization involved in this project. Welcome to a Seeds of Wellbeing Voices from the Field podcast, featuring voices of Hawaii agriculture producers for Hawaii agriculture producers. These podcasts are made possible by a grant from the University of Hawaii, College of Tropical Agriculture and Human Resources, also known as CTAHR, and the Seeds of Wellbeing, or SO project, and is supported by a grant from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, National Institute of Food and Agriculture, and the Hawaii Department of Agriculture. Uncle Glenn is an esteemed and well-respected farmer and New Age CTAHR extension faculty on Molokai. He shares his philosophy, principles, and purpose needed to remain Zen and committed to farming. All right. So thank you, Glenn, for coming on to our podcast again. I know our audience are very excited to hear more of the mana'o coming from you. You've got such a historical and a wealth of knowledge. So I'm going to start off by asking you to elaborate on your Zen of Farming. Can you tell us a little bit about your ideas of that?
Okay, well, the first time I came up with that, I was teaching some classes on the Big Island, and I didn't even know what Zen meant. And so I had to start looking at, what does this mean? So, it talks about meditation, it talks about intuition, it talks about not thinking too much, which is counter to what we do in farming. I mean, you want to know the art, you want to know the science and everything. And I think what is important about Zen is to have a peaceful and a calm in what you do and not be real uneven keeled when you're doing farming. It's like from one storm to the next. And so I read this one thing today. It says, close your eyes, count to 10, create your morning routine. And kind of look at this and say, okay, count to 10 is probably something we need to do anytime we fly off the handle. I kind of reflected on something I heard one time on a movie, Beverly Hills Ninja, to be one with the universe. And so, how are you one with the universe? You're just one piece of this big puzzle. And you need to know your place in this whole system. At the same time, we had a meeting today with all extension agents, and somebody mentioned, extension agents are really eclectic, which is, I think, different from dyslectic, and being able to merge into many areas of thought. That's what eclectic means. So person who derives ideas, styles, or tastes from a broad, diverse range of sources. So, you have friends that farm, you have maybe family that used to farm, and you carry all this knowledge or this second nature with you. My grandfather was a horse whisperer on the Big Island, and he would look at a horse and he could tell you the whole history of the horse without even knowing. He'd look at the horse and he said, "This horse was abused," or he looked at this horse and he said, "This horse is a really bumpy riding horse," just by looking at it. So he had this second nature, and I still remember one time when he told us, "Okay, get ready. I'm bringing in some horses from Molokai." So we lived in Manoa Valley and we raised animals in Manoa. And so he comes home with 50 horses. And he tells us, "Okay, I want you guys to go over there and tell me which horses are tame and which horses are not tame." So we go out there. Okay, we jump on this horse. Okay, bucked off. Okay, this guy is not tame. Go into another horse. Okay, this horse is tame. And at the end of the day, and he's sitting on the fence watching, he isn't saying anything. And at the end of the day, he said, "You can tell if a horse is tame or not just by looking into their eyes." And so you look at their eyes, you look at their ears, you look at how wide-eyed they are, and you can tell if a horse is trained or not. So you have these these second natures that, I mean, you have to bring it out to help you maintain an even keel. And it's even more difficult when people are depending on you. Okay, so you got a spouse or significant other, you got kids, you might have grandkids, and they're depending on you on your success. So it's a heavy burden to carry when you're doing something like this, and you have to maintain an even keel and not lose it.
So how do you do it, Glenn? How do you maintain that with all those demands on your shoulders?
I think part of it is going through the struggles and having experience in doing this kind of struggles. And some people live a lifetime of struggles and they get good at it. I mean,
so it's like exercising, like you're lifting
like
weight, and the actual stress of that actually build muscle. So you kind of the challenges are building your mental muscle, right?
Yeah. So everybody can give you struggles. Your spouse can give you struggles. Your kids can give you struggles. The weather can give you struggles, and all these struggles build up your muscles.
Yeah.
And so you need to have these experiences. You need to remember it, but at the same time, you cannot have it overwhelm you. You have to maintain an even keel. Like, okay, chop that one up to experience. As long as you're not making the same mistakes over and over and over. That, I think they call that insanity.
Yeah. I'm doing the same thing over and over without.
Yeah. So, you know, I mean, okay, you make new mistakes now, but you build upon your database of understanding and realization to move to the next level. You know, so for me, I mean, I may not be the right person to be interviewing at times. I mean, and I'm here as an extension agent. I also have experience farming. I come from a ranching family. My wife is fourth generation Hawaiian homestead farmer. Her family were the first ones, a first group of homesteaders that were farming here, and who saved the Hawaiian Homes Act. The Hawaiian Homes Act was a temporary, an experimental project. And so when the federal government and the state came to Molokai in the late 1920s and saw these individuals growing these crops, they said, okay, the program is a success. But what they didn't see was all these struggles that they went through to get to this point. Carrying water only being available on certain days, carrying water in buckets, drought, heavy winds, praying for rain, and then going with faith and just planting. Okay, we did what we had to do. Now we're just going to have to plant, and then the rain would come.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of pieces to this puzzle that have to be realized, and I think you have to have faith in what you're doing, or you don't do it. You either all in or not at all. And I think a lot of times people don't have all the pieces in order. You know, it's like, okay, I'm gonna go farming. Wake up in the morning and say today I'm gonna start farming. You can't do that. Okay, you cannot do that. There's a lot of thought, pondering that goes into farming, because as a friend of mine in Oregon who's a vegetable breeder, he goes, you know, some days he goes, there's a lot of moving parts today.
Yeah.
Okay. And so how do you keep all these parts moving without having something stuck into the gears and put everything to a stop? And
so how do you do that then?
I think sometimes you got to stop and sit down.
Okay.
You got to ponder, like, okay, what am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? Because sometimes it's just easy. You just keep on doing it. Just keep on doing, keep on doing. You got to stop and you say, okay, am I doing something right? Am I doing something wrong? Am I just not in touch with what's around me? And
so you recommend like an assessment, like an assessment, like you should do this on a
you mentioned that. Okay, funny you mentioned that, because I did one I did this self-assessment, and actually it was based on some USDA. Do you have what it takes to be a farmer? Okay. And I kind of ramped it up. I added some stuff that I thought was important in Hawaii, and so what it is, and Go Farm uses it a lot. I questions like statements like, I know more about my crop than anybody else, or I know that farming is a very risky and stressful business. Mm-hmm. I realize that I'm far from any medical services. So you have all these, and when you go through it, I mean, you can easily pick out where your weaknesses are and where your strengths are. Mm. And I tell them, I said, use this as a way to strengthen your weaknesses. Mm. I mean, human nature is such where you're going to run away from your weaknesses. Yeah. I mean, I do that all the time. We all do. You're going to run away from your weaknesses, and you're going to go do the things that are comfortable for you. Yeah. And you cannot do that. I mean, you gotta face the whole animal.
Yeah. So what would you say? Because right now we've done this assessment, and it's the stress and the depression is actually quite alarming. So I want to explore about, what do you think is the fundamental root of that's contributing to the mental health issue among our Hawaii ag producers?
Oh man, I think COVID just made it even. I mean, COVID just magnified everything. Uncertainty. What is going to happen tomorrow? Can I sell my crop? Am I planting the right crop? Am I connected? Farmers, I think, by nature are isolated. Mm-hmm. And they don't, a lot of times they don't talk to each other. They don't have opportunities to talk to each other. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, when we have meetings, it's amazing. I mean, what we try to do is you need to get them off the farm. So what you can do is you have food. Mm. So they'll come like, oh, okay, we're gonna have our laulaus with poi and stuff. I'll be there. And sometimes the content of the meeting is not as important as the interaction with these guys and linking up with each other. Oh yeah, I can help you on that. Yeah. What is really strong out of the Hawaiian community, the Hawaiian homes community, is interdependence. Mm. So a farm business is very independent. I got to survive, and for the extreme ones, I got to step on everybody in order to survive. And so you have the large farmers. I mean, they're just willing to step on everybody if they have to, just to stay alive. Mm. In the rural community, especially Hawaiian homes, what makes Hawaiian homes communities different is that some of these individuals, their families have been living next to each other for 7 generations. Okay, so you know everybody. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we get into each other's hair, but what I found is that when we have a common enemy, we all come together. So you got to find that common enemy that brings everybody together. The stress, I think, some of it is
the fundamental root. The fundamental root, because you said uncertainty, but what is it? Yeah, because some people can be okay with uncertainty. So what is?
I think knowledge. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people who farm don't have the knowledge to farm. Okay. And in farming, there's 2 pieces to the puzzle in farming. There's the art and the science. So a lot of them are weak in the science. They don't know how to diagnose diseases. They don't understand soil a whole lot. And the soil is complex in Hawaii. We have 160 different soil types, more than any place else in the world. And every single one is slightly different. You add another layer to that, and that's the climatic zones. So I think we have something like 8 or 9 climatic zones. Most of the climatic zones, with the exception of tundra. Okay. And so you multiply those 2 numbers, and that's how many microclimates you have. That's how many different climatic conditions you have. Some crops will grow good in certain conditions, and other crops will not. Okay, so you have those kind of situations, but at the same time, you have the market side. Mm-hmm. And you have distances, and then you have changing costs. Mm-hmm. You have all these things that are coming at you hard and fast. And for a lot of people, they cannot handle. I mean, you want to have a certain amount of certainty. I mean, somebody tells you, okay, I'll buy all your papaya. All you got to do is produce them. Okay, now you just cut your job in half. Because, I mean, if you're doing a good job, you should be spending at least 50% of your time on marketing. Because if you don't have a good market, you're not going to make it. And so you have these food hubs coming along that will help farmers. Maybe they get a better price. If you're going through wholesalers, they're taking half the profit and you're only getting half. The price of freight is going up big time. The price of freight between Hawaii and the mainland is going up. I heard some prices of 300% increase in freight across the Pacific. So you have all these moving targets, and you're trying to predict what crop to grow and what the market is going to look like 3 to 6 months ahead, or in the case of fruit trees, 7 years ahead. And you might have made a bad decision. Okay, how do you fix that? Okay, you know, so you just went from lemons to lemonade. So I think Hawaii, more than any place else, you have all these layers of things that are starting to affect us. Climate change. Climate change is big time. I mean, I can see it on Molokai, and it has to do a lot with the weather. The wind direction has changed. I mean, we used to have trade winds 3/5 of the time. This is based on data since 1910. Over 60% of the time is trade winds. 3 years ago, there was a 25% decrease. This year, so far, it's probably 50%. With the exception of some of the strong winds we've been having lately, the wind has changed from a northeast direction to an easterly direction. And this is based on information from NOAA. So, you know, I emailed the meteorologist. I said, hey, what's happening? You know, the weather is such and such. And I get into debates with them. Okay. And so Craig Kodama is one of the meteorologists. So about a month ago, I said, hey, Craig, what's going on, man? You know, he said, then the weather has changed to more of a easterly winds. And what's happening is Maui and the Big Island is blocking you guys. So you're getting this funny kind of wind that is not bringing the rain. So for the last 3 months, I guess from around December to around March, we had no rain. And we had hot days, and the nights were in the 50s. Okay, we never get that kind of weather. Certain things grew really well in the early season. The mustards, the broccoli, cauliflower, wong pak choy, all this kind of stuff. Kailan did really well. But what had happened also is that the cold weather killed off a lot of the parasites and predators that control the bad guys. So the bad guys went out of control. Caterpillars coming out of the woodwork, all these insects just wiping out the crops.
Oh my goodness.
So it was really good early in the season. I said, man, we're eating cauliflower, we're eating broccoli. And the wife said, man, we got to plant more of this stuff. And right behind there, the pests were right on us and just eating up everything. The fruit flies were coming out, pepper weevils, you name it, because of this weather. And so now I'm looking at, okay, what's going to happen in the next 3 months?
Right.
And the good farmer is trying to project down the road. They're going to be right, they're going to be wrong. It's going to be based on intuition, or it's going to be based on data, or it's going to be based on both. You know, so just this morning, I said, I wonder what the weather's going to be. What do you think? You know, I'm asking my wife, and, you know, family has lived here since 1926 on this island, and originally from Maui, a taro farmer from Maui. She goes, oh man, I don't know, you know. I said, I'm thinking it's going to rain, you know, later. We're going to have rain later in the summer, and it's going to be good. But everything is predicting drought. California, the western states, I mean, you're talking about the worst drought in 300 years.
300 years.
Yeah. So, you know, you're getting this kind of information, and you're trying to absorb, and okay, how does it affect me? What am I going to do? What am I going to do different? What does the market look like?
No
What is
wonder.
my strategy?
That is, I mean, you're really highlighting and making it very obvious all the different stressors, and there are a multitude of stressors that changes all the time. And so you've already shared that you need to have that even keel. So I want to talk about like the solutions then, moving toward the solution. So what needs to be addressed and solved to really help Hawaii farmers?
Man,
because they're already accounting like weather, it's unpredictable, right?
Yeah.
But what is the human part that can be solved to help Hawaii farmers, the human element then? Because we can't control the nature elements.
There's trust that needs to happen between farmers so they can work together, they can help each other out, sharing information about what works and what doesn't work. This is kind of like the new area, I think, because in the past it's like, I don't tell anybody what I'm doing. You know, I'm not going to tell anybody what I'm planting and everything like that. So we get into this big secrecy, but it's about survival.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to be secret and you don't survive, that's your fault. We need to be talking to each other. We need to be interacting. We need to be strengthening each other. We need to be drawing upon each other's strengths.
So how do we do that? How do we do that, Glenn?
You know, I just read this real interesting article, and it was this philosopher that came from China to the United States to try and get to the gut of Hawaii, of the United States. You know, what makes United States what it is, and you know, so he came down to the fact that technology is what keeps America going.
Okay.
And now he went back, and he's one of the main advisors to the president of China.
Oh.
Okay. And so he's saying one of the big problems with the United States is the family system is falling apart. Okay. And it's just like disintegrating because we're not spending enough time. And so what they're doing in China is they're strengthening all this kind of stuff to keep the family in focus. I mean, this is what, you know, I don't know if that's what we want in the United States. You want freedom, you want, you know, to choose and everything, but he identified the family system as really important. So what if you don't have a family system? You're probably going to have to create one. You're going to have to create this family system in your community to strengthen, to make everything more solid.
So is what you're saying then is that this unwillingness to share is actually the root is because we don't have a strong sense of belonging and love within a family. If you had that, you'd be willing to share and be generous with others. Is that what you're trying to say?
I think that's one, but the other part is that everybody should be a family.
Everybody should be a family.
Yeah. So, you know, your neighbors and everybody. I mean, talk about that, what that saying that, you know, it takes a village to raise a child.
Yeah.
I think some of that applies. You know, we live on an island where everybody knows everybody, and that can be good or bad.
Yeah.
Because the bad is that we kind of allow things to happen. People are into drugs, and we know the family, and we don't get involved. We allow it to fester, and that's a big problem in Hawaii. I mean, the drug problem is crystal meth is out of control. Yeah. You know. And it's creating a lot of social problems, and it's in almost every household, or it's getting to every household. And we allow it to happen. We don't set standards. Okay, this is not going to happen. Okay. You know? And we don't get involved. Everybody kind of like, I think a lot of it is old style. You know, my mom used to always tell me, you know, she said, it's interesting. She went to Kauai and she bumped into these people. And he said, "Oh, I know your son. He grows the best tomatoes, but he's a radical. You know, he's an activist." So my mom says, "You know, this person told me that." I said, "So what the hell does that mean? You know, what does activist mean? What does radical mean? You know, I mean, it all comes down to your own mindset. On Molokai, we're known as activists. You know, because we get involved in our community. We don't let anybody come in here. We don't let any kind of development come here. We ask hard questions. You know, how is it going to benefit us? You know, is it only about profit? You know, are you going to share the profits with us? And so we need to be involved. I go to other islands and I said, wow, what happened to this island? You know, you guys get this island, this happened on this island? I went to Kauai and the guys were, well, you got to understand, we need jobs and everything. I said, you know something, you guys are a bunch of wimps, you know, to allow this to happen to your island. It needs to benefit you.
Right.
It's not, it's just like capitalism run amok. So I don't know, I mean, Molokai is I mentioned this, I said, I think Molokai is a breakaway socialist republic. And so we need to have some middle ground in all this.
Okay.
I mean, we need a little bit of capitalism. We need a little bit of socialism. We need to be caring for each other. When somebody falls down, we got to pick that person up. We don't just go step on them or walk by like nothing really happened in our life.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of that is about caring, you know, and some of these farmers, they're so isolated. They're out there with these heavy burdens on their shoulders. And nobody's there to help them, you know.
And are these farmers the large farmers or the small farmers that you're saying?
The small farmers, the startup farmers. I think I just saw some data today. Go Farm had 430 graduates so far since they started, and 60% of them are farming. Okay,
that's pretty good.
And, yeah, so I'm looking at this and I'm saying, okay, what kind of lease did they get? Did they get land? Nobody's helping them get land. So now you got a month-to-month lease, and I hear nightmare stories. This guy had a month-to-month. He started making money. The landowner saw that, and they kicked him out and took over the land. So you have all these little factors, and I think what you need to find out is what is the root factor in all of this. There's a lot of factors, but what is the root one? I mean, I don't know. Maybe we can't get to that, but maybe some of the main ones. But I think being able to talk to somebody else, sharing ideas, sharing values. In Hawaii, I mean, I was raised in a family of 6 boys, and I'm the oldest, and we have 2 sets of twins. And so from the youngest to the oldest is 5 years old. Our family were ranchers. We ranched all over Oahu. Okay, all Hawaii Kai, we ranched all behind those valleys, Kuli'o Valley, Lulule Valley, Kipapa Gulch. And we had to work. And we didn't have enough time to get into trouble, although we still did. But we learned, my grandfather was into it, my father was into it, and my father used to say, the animals eat before you do. You know, so we had all these things that we had to do. And so we have a Chinese neighbor on one side, 2 Japanese neighbors on another side, Portuguese neighbor on another side, and we were one big family.
Okay.
And so that, I mean, I still remember our Chinese neighbor, Jenny Law. If we did something wrong, she'd be yelling across, Glenn, get off your brother. And my mother wouldn't say anything. My mother wouldn't say a thing, you know. But I see you doing that to your brother. Don't do that to your brother, you know. So we have this kind of family system. And then across the street, the Arizumis, Auntie Millie Arizumi was a baker. She had Manoa Bakery. And she would give us all the leftover pastries, 55-gallon drums to feed to our pigs. And Auntie Millie made the best chocolate chip cookies. We were just waiting for it every Christmas. And Jenny Lowe made the most unreal Chinese food. And you can tell, we can smell the hamha being cooked. I said, okay, get ready, you know? So when you have a community like this, they're all watching over each other, helping each other. And so you got to create this. If you don't have it, you need to create it.
So it sounds like you're saying the root is this disconnection and isolation.
I think that's a big part of it.
Okay.
Nobody's sharing their struggles with anybody. They're carrying it on their own shoulders or their immediate family and nothing more.
And that's the mentality among farmers, at least on the mainland, that this idea that you can't cobble up and you like do it on your own, and you show that you can manage it. It's so how do we overcome that sort of mindset? And
that's the American spirit. I think maybe we need to look at the Hawaiian spirit, and by Hawaiian I mean all of us. Every every group, that we can work together, we can overcome the direction of the world.
So are there any current group? Are there a current group now that are doing this, that are facilitating this sort of sharing of resources and putting down boundaries?
No, I don't think so. I mean, there might be little things here and there. I think part of it is that the more isolated you are from people, the more doubt you have about them. And the more interaction you have with them, you can start sharing and changing things. My wife was involved in a survey of Hawaiian homesteaders about 2 or 3 years ago. She interviewed 100 homesteaders, and it was for food sovereignty.
Okay.
So it looked at what they ate and everything like that. But what came out was that a lot of them were isolated on their homes. They had issues and they didn't know where to turn. And she says, we gotta do something. We gotta go, help them. I said, well, we gotta create an institution. I mean, we need to create a system of doing this kind of things. And a lot of times we're just driven by grants. In our job, we're driven by grants that may not even address what we're doing in Hawaii.
Yeah.
And so I think that kind of affects things in certain ways. I mean, if the University of Hawaii was truly bottom up, clientele driven, we could be addressing these specific things and prioritizing what is happening in our communities.
So, the solution one of the solutions you offer is provide more opportunities for folks to come together to share. And most grants don't allow food, as you know, right, as an expense, and for parties, for gathering. Yeah. So if there was opportunities for more of these creations where people do come together to just share, talk stories and food, that might be it, right? We don't need to do anything else.
Right. I think the other part too is to have people that can come and help as well. But see, even then, sometimes in rural communities, they're kind of cautious about outsiders coming in. And Molokai is like that at times too. Yeah. And then for us, sometimes we don't want to bring people in if we don't know enough about them.
Yeah.
Because they come in and they're scammers, and then they'll say, Glenn, you brought this guy in,
Right.
So I mean, our credibility is paper thin.
Yeah.
Even an extension, you cannot screw up. I mean, you really have to keep in mind that the people you work with are very important.
And so I want to go back to also this issue of labor and land, because you already mentioned some of that, right? So that's one of the big stressors for farmers in Hawaii, the access to land. Yeah. And you didn't mention it yet, but we'll talk about it, of labor, right? Skilled labor. So can you offer some solutions to those two issues?
Okay. The Department of Land and Natural Resources was just getting ready to transfer 90,000 acres to Department of Agriculture.
Okay.
And what I've been advocating for, I sent testimony, a bunch so far, was two things. One, give Hawaiian homes land that they can use for housing and other things, so they can give back some of the land that they cannot use for anything. Okay. On Oahu, 20% of Hawaiian homelands are the Waimanalo cliffs. Do we expect the Hawaiians to be cliff dwellers? And I brought this up in Island Insights last week, and they read my question. I said, oh, wow, they read the question. So we have lands, but they're in the wrong hands. So give the conservation lands to DNR, give Hawaiian Homes some of those lands to farm. The other thing, you have the Agriculture Development Corporation that is basically giving lands to the big guys, to the corn companies, to the large farmers, when they should be focusing on new farmer initiatives. It's like we call it in agriculture the law of the minimum. You can have all these pieces to the puzzle, but the one piece that is missing will stop you in your tracks. So it's like, okay, I can be growing taro in Molokai, and my market is Honolulu, but I only have a canoe to take it to Honolulu. I can only take a canoe load. That's all I can do.
Yeah.
So that's the same thing with agriculture development. So we got these farmers, they just got trained, they got trained in the economics, they got trained in production, they did a test run on a small plot, they know what they want to do, but they can't get land with land tenure. Okay, you need land tenure so your plan can be bankable. If you have a month-to-month lease, you're going to rake that land. You're going to just get whatever you can out of it before you have to leave.
Yeah.
You need to get 20-year leases, 40-year leases, so you can really start farming when you're young and build something out of it. The other thing is you have to come up with models of how to farm. One of the big models on the mainland right now is called MIFS. Okay, and it's multiple income farm family. So one member of the family has a job with health insurance, and the other one can farm. Okay, the only other option is to create a state health insurance program for farmers. And this is something I know the Rapoon brothers have talked about. We've debated this, and this is really important, very, very important.
Okay.
And the other thing that they said, I kind of flashed on it just recently. I think it was Paul Rapoon said, "What is the most important thing about farming?" And he said, "Having a friend that knows how to fix things." Okay. So you got broken tractors, you got broken water lines, you got broken this, broken that. You need somebody to help you on that. But the land needs to also come with access to water.
Yeah.
So, and then the other piece to that is, where do the farmers live? I heard a real interesting statement from one of the large farmers, his son. And he said, the reason why a lot of the immigrant farmers farm is so they have someplace to live. Okay. I don't think that's far-fetched. They can live on their farm, they have someplace to live. If they had to rent someplace today, which is totally ridiculous, okay, I mean, totally outrageous. And what's also happening is, because of this Zoom era, I zoomed in with two people last week. One was living in Hamakua and the other one was living in Kau. And he said the land is just getting bought up like there's no tomorrow. Okay. So you have these outside factors going on that's going to make it even harder for people to farm.
Yeah.
Okay. So how are we making it easier for farmers to succeed? Okay. This is the way. And so what are their basic needs? They need land, they need water, they need someplace to live, and they need food too. Okay. So you gotta address their basic needs.
So what is preventing the public or policymakers or whatever the powers to be to realize that farmers need support to have access to land and labor and water and resources? What is it?
Lack of vision. The main focus is getting reelected. That's the reality. Okay. So the main focus is getting reelected, and it doesn't have to be good. It just has to look good. And so who's doing the heavy lifting? How do we get land like agricultural parks that focus on beginning farmers, new farmers, that may even allow them to live on the lot, and working out the details so that they can have like a 20-foot container kind of home or something, not a mansion or anything, like a small footprint on the farm that they can actually farm, because egg theft is a big problem.
Yeah.
So if you can address all of these issues by doing this, nobody wants to take that on.
Nobody wants to take that on. Yeah, nobody wants to take that on, And part of it is you're dealing with large landowners. I mean, they're probably one of the most powerful lobbies at the legislature, the LURF, the Land Use Research Foundation. So they don't want to see certain things from happening. One of the things we had proposed about 5 years ago, I said on the state taro task force, what we wanted to do was to be able to grow taro in the forest reserves, in the watershed,
as a one to grow food, but also to slow the movement of water out of the watershed. Allow the water to kind of migrate in the watershed and seep down into the ground to help, rebuild our aquifers.
Yeah.
Oh, that got shut down,
Why?
So I don't understand a lot of times what they, okay, if you don't have a vision, all you're doing is blocking.
So, but I'm trying
Just
to understand the motivation then. Why? What is it the benefit for blocking and allowing farmers the resources they need? So I just don't understand. What is it that's blocked? What is the motivation behind? Because there should be a rational reason behind.
25 years ago, a lot of the people in the legislature had agrarian roots. Okay, they came off the plantation, they had family that farmed and everything. Today, it's almost nil. They have no understanding of agriculture, and so that's a big problem.
So that's the issue then. The lack of understanding of all the stressors and the challenges and what it takes to be able to grow food.
Definitely. And so how much money do they spend in agriculture? Okay. Less than 1% of the state budget.
0.3%.
Yeah.
Yes.
So they got to put their money where their mouth is. You cannot just talk in a great line about, oh yeah, food security. I mean, if they didn't learn from COVID, if they didn't learn from some of the tsunamis that were just a test run for us, it's not a matter of if, but when.
Yeah.
Some of these things are going to happen, catastrophes, and we're going to be eating each other. I mean,
hopefully it doesn't go that way, but there are some folks. But
I mean, it can real easy. I mean, it's so funny because I was up at Kamehameha Schools. We're having this annual graduation banquet, and my brother, he's a mechanic for the bus company, and he used to moonlight up at Kamehameha Schools and drive their bus. So we're sitting in this luau with 1,000 people, and he comes in and tells me, tsunami in Tokyo, get out of here right now. So we jump on the car, like, let's go right now. We get out, and as we're driving up, we see everybody running out of the building, and we're ahead of the pack. So we drive. I said, you know what? We're staying at Pagoda. We flew in, and I said, we got to get water. That's the main thing. So we drive to a 7-Eleven on off Peacoy, and in minutes, gridlock. I mean, cars all over the place. Nobody can move. It's like total gridlock. And I said, why the hell are we on Oahu? If we're on Molokai, this wouldn't happen. We're on Oahu, and I'm thinking, okay, all we need now is for the electricity to go out, because then the cash registers don't work, the street lights don't work, not the gas station doesn't work, and nothing works. Okay, then we're in big trouble. And so who's planning for the future? Okay, nobody's planning for the future. So this last one, we had this whole supply chain issue with Hawaii. You couldn't get enough food. They were like giving out food. I mean, if we didn't learn from that, then we're just totally ignorant.
Okay, I'm going to play the devil advocate also, Glenn, because there are folks who said we can't, the big ag versus small ag, or small farmers, right? Most of us in Hawaii are small farmers, but there are folks who are saying that the big ag contributes quite a bit, if not at least more than the small ag to the Hawaii economy, because they're selling their produce, even though they're not producing food for Hawaii, they're at least supporting the income that Hawaii is helping the Hawaii income. And the fact that Hawaii, folks are saying that Hawaii can't be completely independent. So even if we're food secure, we are interrelated with everyone else. So there's no such thing as we can be self-sustaining or for ourselves. So how would you respond to that?
Yeah. I agree, but we can do a much better job than what we're doing right now.
How? Can you explain?
By having more support for agricultural development, looking at food security as an emergency, which it is, and having funds, like the federal funds coming down. Maui County has given out some funds, grants for farmers to get them on their feet. We need to at least be moving in this direction. Oahu is a different animal than the neighbor islands. I mean, there's certain parts of the different islands where we can be fairly food secure, I mean, and when I was just I was just making pickles the last couple of days, namasu, lamasu, and other stuff, And I told my wife, wow, just think, all this stuff in these pickles we grew. Okay, there's carrots in here. There's Maui onions. Well, we call it Maui County onions, Molokai onions, and cucumbers that we grew. I said, all of this stuff that we grew. And I know friends that say, oh man, some days I have 100% Molokai meal. Got venison, got limu, got poi, got all this stuff that we grew. So we need to always be moving in that direction. And it's so funny because I remember this senator from Maui. He was Mamoru Yamasaki, and he used to be the Ways and Means chairman. And I remember him telling me, he says, Molokai will be the bread basket, And I said, Senator, that's a good idea. But you know something? In order to make bread, you need the dough. Okay. He looks at me and he smiles, kind of smiles, because he was the guy in charge of the money. And so you had these kinds of individuals that came out of hard times, came out of rural communities, came out of plantation communities, that understands what it means not to have food. Okay. They understand. Today, people have become complacent. I can go to Costco, I can get all this stuff. Yeah, but what if you can't even get into Costco? Right. Or maybe when Costco doesn't have anything. Yeah. So we're not planning ahead. We don't understand. We're not taking our vulnerability seriously. I mean, if we had a tsunami, it's all over, okay? All the electric plants on the shore, you got the petroleum facilities on the shore, you got the ports on the shore, you got roads on the shore. Yeah. You're in deep kimchi. Okay. I mean, I look at that on Molokai too. I mean, you say, okay, what we got in the ground? Okay, we got 5,000 feet of this crop. We can fall back on that. And then our neighbor has this, and this guy has that, and we go hunting. The deer runs through. The protein is running through our yard. You just got to go get it. So, I mean, some people would think that, oh man, I don't live in that. I live in this new technology, and I just press the button, and here it is. Okay. As my colleague used to tell me, you cannot fax a deli sandwich from New York. Okay. You have to make it. And so I think we're not going to get 50%. We may not even get 25%, but we never know if we never go. Okay. Well, I used to say that. My wife used to get wild when I used to say that. I said, what does that mean? Yeah. And so the other day we're making pickles, and it was a busy day for me. I was like, okay, 8 o'clock, I got to do this. 8:30, I got to do that. 9 o'clock, I got to do this. And all this stuff will line up. And Moise said, you got to help me make these pickles. And it's 6 o'clock in the morning. She goes, you got to make the sauce. I don't make the sauce. I just cut the stuff up. I said, but I got to go. She goes. And so I got kind of frustrated. And I'm thinking to myself, this is what farmers go through sometimes. You get frustrated because you got to do something else, but you got to get stuck with that. And she made a statement. She goes, expect the unexpected. Okay. And as a farmer, that's really important. Yeah. If you're going to get all bent out of shape because something happened that didn't go your way, now you got derailed to the max. You got totally derailed. And I learned from experience that once you get mad, you're going to get thrown off track. You got to maintain an even keel. And this one thing happened to me. I was flashing on this last night. So I don't know. We got into a disagreement. I was all mad. I walked away. I went up and I was going to mow our fields. We have about 10 acres. So I was going to mow the fields. So I borrowed a tractor from my friend. It doesn't work that well. It doesn't have brakes. The wires are loose. So I go over there and it doesn't start. So I said, okay, I gotta do something. So I get a screwdriver and I start tightening up the screw. Okay. And I accidentally start the tractor. Okay. So now it's in gear. Okay. So it's moving, and it wasn't moving slowly. It runs over me. It breaks my ankle, runs off my butt, goes off my shoulder, and I just happened to turn my body because they had a lawnmower connected to it. And the lawnmower just made a line on my back. And it was heading down the road right for my sister-in-law's house next door. And my life flashed before my eyes, but it wasn't about me. It was about, I will be remembered by wiping out this whole town of Hollywood with this tractor. Because the tractor was headed straight for the credit union. And after the credit union was the post office. And after the post office was our office. And after that was the irrigation office. And I would have wiped out the whole town. So I went and I chased after the tractor. I jumped on the mower. I climbed up onto the tractor. And there was this wire ticking. I said, oh, this might be the cutoff switch. So I pulled this wire and the tractor lunges forward, And finally I said, okay, I'm just going to have to fall over and, I'll fall on the stick shift and maybe I'll get it into neutral. And I did it. I stopped it.
Oh my God, Glenn.
But then I broke my ankle and I had to go to Queen's Hospital and they put 3 screws in my leg, in my ankle. And then I'm thinking to myself, okay, 1, do not get mad when you're operating equipment. So what happened was, this is the good part about it. The university says, Glenn, you need to go to tractor safety training. So they send me to Peosta, Iowa for 1 week.
And tractor safety, not anger management. It was tractor safety.
Tractor safety training up in northern Iowa, and what the funny thing about it is, okay, the tractor that ran me over was a John Deere tractor, and I get to that place, and it was the 150th anniversary of John Deere. So all these farmers are bringing all these tractors from all these antiques, and I said, "Wow, this is like full circle." I don't know how it ended up over here.
That's
so
a
yeah,
great story.
The lesson is, do not do things that are important when you're mad, because you're gonna get worse. You're gonna get into worse situation than you started with.
That's a valuable lesson. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. I want to circle back to the healthcare, because you mentioned that. And I think that's really important, because I have asked this, why Farm Bureau, at least on the mainland, that farmers are able to have, because they have pool of numbers, right, to be able to get healthcare. We don't have that in Hawaii because we don't have enough farmers to be able to pull together to advocate for that. So what do you think about that? Or what would be another options and solutions for us?
In a lot of things in Hawaii, we're not big enough. Okay. I hear this so often. You're trying to do some special state-of-the-art facility on Molokai for waste management. And it's like some kind of plasma burning stuff. And then you can extract these nutrients. You can extract fertilizer. You can extract all these different things. And I was sitting with these guys and they said, well, Molokai, you guys don't generate enough rubbish. So you need to bring rubbish from all the different islands. I said, are you guys nuts or what? Can you just downscale it? Well, we really don't have the technology because we're looking at economies of scale and everything. We got to think of things in a different way. We're islands, in the middle of nowhere. What kind of technology fits us? And the same thing with healthcare. There must be some way we must have innovative minds that can figure this thing out.
Okay.
What kind of model can work for healthcare? Do we do self-insurance? Do we do something that the state of Hawaii comes up with? We create some special program nationally that addresses this? There's got to be a way. The problem is we represent 2% of the economy. So we're nothing. We're an afterthought. But then,
except for a tsunami. After a tsunami, right? There's no food, then everybody's like, wait, okay, we need to make sure we take care of our farmers.
So, if it's not a tsunami, it's a hurricane, or a strike on the West Coast or something that's going to just bring us to our knees. Who's planning for that? And so I think, I think as a whole, our society is like, and my mom's generation is like that. Don't bother. Don't cause trouble. That's the old Hawaiian, Asian kind of attitude. And the Hawaiians are Asians. Let's be clear about that. The Polynesians are Asians. Okay. So you part of that is society.
Okay.
Part of it, we're not aggressive enough to make changes. We just allow our politicians to do what they want. We should be calling them out. I mean, they're getting very obnoxious. They're getting to be bullies. I mean, we need to have bullying programs for our legislators to help them understand their role in what they're supposed to be doing. They are supposed to be serving us. They're not supposed to be, interrogating us and harassing us.
Yeah.
So yeah, we got major systemic problems in Hawaii.
Yeah. Yes. So the last question I'm going to ask you, but maybe not the last question, but it's another question before I let you go. I've already asked an hour of your time, but just a little bit more is, so how do farmers scale up? Because that's one of the issues I'm sure you heard about. Do we need to do farmers, or do we just have a bunch of small farms, or should we scale up? And how do you scale up for the small farms?
I think it really depends on how you're scaling up. I mean, if you're talking about conventional farming, it's not rosy in some conventional farms. Okay, I visited some conventional farms on Oahu, and they got major problems. They got pest problems. They got all kinds of problems. And what they do is they overplant so they can supply the market. And if the market gets short, they plow it all under. Okay. That's a lot of food going under the ground. Is that the kind of agriculture that we want? Or do we want something that is a little bit more sustainable, that involves having a life of redeeming social value, being able to make ends meet without having 3 jobs? I mean, what is the vision for Hawaii? And agriculture can play an important role in rural communities that have nothing else.
Okay.
So we need to look at it as an economic engine. And I think most people just kind of poo-poo, all these small farmers, these small farmers are paying for their family and they're not on welfare. Okay. So you have situations. What are the choices? What are the choices? And I remember getting into a debate with one of my bosses one time about this. He said, well, then, should we be subsidizing water for agriculture? I said, well, you got a choice. You can do that, or you can pay for welfare. Which one do you want to do? So, and then he looked at me. He didn't know what to say. I said, what are the options? What options do you want? Okay, and I don't look at it as subsidy. I look at it as an investment in food production. So it depends how you look at things.
Yeah. And what your priority seems to be and where the value is lying. Yes. Yes.
For us, I look at Prince Kuhio and his vision, and I embrace his vision. He had a term that he used is aina ho'opulopula. And my mom used to say that all the time, pulopula. And wait. Pulopula. Yeah. Okay. Pulopula, wait, my battery's going down. Pulopula means it's like propagating material. Okay. It's like a cutting or a piece of a plant, like a huli, a taro huli. And so aina hoa pulopula is a land to grow this huli. But it also implies the people. Okay. The people are huli. The people are paloa, and they need to grow. So you're growing the people and you're growing the land, you're growing the food from the land, and you're growing both of them together. Okay. And that's the concept of aina hoa pulopula, which is Prince Kuhio's vision. Okay. So that's really important. And that applies to everybody. You want to be able to grow your family. You want to be able to bring your kids up so they understand all this stuff. You want to have a society that supports the good things for everyone and not for a chosen few and the 1%. Maybe I'm talking socialism again. I don't know, but I think we need to kind of be moving into that because capitalism is not working. Okay, that's clear to me. It ain't working. It's resource intensive, just wiping all our resources and stuff like that. We need to start looking at other ways of living in Hawaii. And we really got to look at innovation as the key to everything we do. And it may not be large scale agriculture because you're talking about pesticides, you're talking about all this other stuff. We need to be doing responsible agriculture, you know. And so I think.
And how do you then bring in those who are currently doing traditional, conventional to your perspective or your this?
I think, you know, what's interesting about them is that some of them are changing. Okay, so I know one of them that's really large, heavy into composting. Okay, getting compost on the land, because they see the benefits. So some of them will change, some of them will stay the same. But hopefully they're constantly moving in a positive direction. But yeah, conventional agriculture is really different. And Oahu depends on them. And some even on the neighbor islands. But on the neighbor islands, we have opportunities to do community-based agriculture. The agriculture that really supports the community. And, you know, as small farmers, we always look at those who are having a hard time. You know, I remember a couple of weeks ago, it's like my wife said, okay, this is Kokua Day. So everything we harvested that day, we gave them away. You know, we gave them to family and friends and everybody. And I said, you know, and I didn't say anything. I mean, you can be just totally capitalistic, but at the same time, you can be doing stuff like this and feeling really good about yourself.
Yeah.
And feeling good is important.
It is important. And, you know, in our survey, it shows that the larger the size and the more money actually you're producing, the higher is your stress and depression, which is.
Oh, yes.
Why do you say, oh, yes? Can you explain why? Help. Yes. Why you say that?
I think more at stake.
Okay.
I mean, you know, you got millions at stake. I mean, I know one farmer on Oahu, and he has a totally different mindset. He used to farm on Molokai, you know, and he said, well, if I can make 5 cents a pound, I'm happy. Okay. It's because it's 5 cents times 12 million pounds. Okay. And so he can operate on these kind of margins. Small farmers cannot. They got a lot of stuff to cover, you know. So it's a different mindset. Is more and this person is a strong economist looking at this kind of stuff, but at the same time, it's cutthroat farming. You know, I'm not going to let anybody get in my way. I'm going to step on everybody. I'm going to run over everybody. So you know, that is stressful. You know, but at the same time, you got community-based farming where, I can help you with that. Or I can rototill that for you because I'm going to have my tractor hooked up with that, and I can help you on this. I'm short of this crop. You want to go sell, you know, your crop to my market? So you have these types of models that are emerging. I mean, the food hubs that benefit the farmer. Okay, a lot of the systems do not benefit the farmer, and so you got to look at that, because if the farmer doesn't farm, you got nothing to sell. So how do you support the farmer? Do you just take advantage of the farmer? You know, I'll buy your crop for 50 cents and then selling it for $1 or $1.25. And that is the old model that's gone on in Hawaii for a long time. But this emerging model with food hubs and more profits going back to farmers is definitely shaking up things and can really expand if we have the right resources to bring resources to bear on this model.
Well, thank you, Glenn. You've shared a lot of wonderful information and stories. I'm going to ask you just to end our podcast with 3 words of wisdom or 3 things that you would recommend any farmers to keep that even keel.
Have a good night's rest.
One. What's this?
I mentioned that one, and then the other one I mentioned at the Go Farm annual conference. I said, if your farm doesn't have any weeds, that's a sign of a sick mind. So balance is really important, and having small successes to build upon your sanity.
Small successes, one step at a time.
Yeah. Okay. One step at a time. Exactly.
One step at a time, but at least move, right?
Yeah. Forward movement. I mean, it's like if you ride a bicycle and you don't move, the bike can fall down. You gotta keep telling
Exactly.
I
Just
think
a little
Darwin
bit.
used to talk about that. Darwin used to talk about that.
Well, thank you so much. I'm going to pause our recording now. That was awesome. We want to thank Uncle Glenn for his generosity and mana'o. We also want to thank all our ag producers throughout the islands, and especially those we have heard on the podcast, for discussing ways they address the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual dimensions of Hawaii ag production. Thank you for listening to the Seeds of Wellbeing Voices from the Field podcast, featuring their perspectives of ag productions throughout the Hawaii Islands. If you have found it helpful, please follow, like, and share this episode with others. And if you have any ideas about how we can make it better, please let us know in the comments or use the link on our website. Mahalo for tuning in.